In a small, isolated town in the heart of America, surrounded by dense, unyielding forests, there lay an unsettling legend about an old, abandoned house known as the Gracemere estate. The townspeople whispered about it in hushed, fearful tones, for it was said that whoever entered the house never returned. A group of teenagers, fueled by curiosity and a desire for adventure, decided to explore the Gracemere estate one stormy night. As they approached, the old rickety house loomed against the dark sky, its windows like empty, staring eyes. The moment they stepped inside, a sense of dread filled the air. The house was in shambles, with rotting furniture and walls covered in mold. Strange, unexplainable noises echoed through the halls, and a foul, decaying smell hung heavily in the air. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a room that was different from the rest. It was cleaner, almost preserved, with a large book lying open on a table. The pages were filled with disturbing images and writings about dark rituals and sacrifices. Suddenly, they heard a low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. Out of the darkness emerged a horrific figure, its skin pale and rotting, eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It was the keeper of the house, a twisted soul condemned to protect its dark secrets. The teenagers tried to flee, but the house seemed to change around them, corridors twisting into impossible angles, doors leading back into the same room. The air grew colder, and they could feel the presence of the keeper following them, its breath like. One by one, the teenagers were caught by the keeper. They screamed as they were dragged into the darkness, their voices abruptly silenced. The last teenager, trembling with fear, found a hidden exit and barely escaped with his life. As he ran through the forest, he could hear the ghastly howls of his friends echoing behind him. When he finally reached the safety of the town, he was forever changed, his eyes haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. The Gracemere estate stood silent in the forest, its secrets undisturbed, waiting for the next curious soul to dare to uncover its gruesome past. The town continued to avoid the cursed house, and the legend of the Gracemere estate grew, a chilling reminder of the evil that lurked within its walls. The survivor of the Gracemere estate, haunted by the nightmarish experience, couldn't shake off the horrific memories. The townspeople, shocked by the tragedy, warned everyone to stay away from the cursed house, but as time passed, the incident turned into a ghost story for thrill seekers and the brave-hearted. Months later, a group of paranormal investigators, intrigued by the tale, decided to explore the Gracemere estate. Equipped with cameras and recording devices, they aimed to uncover the truth behind the legend. As they entered the house, a palpable sense of unease filled the air, as if the house itself was alive and watching. The team split up to cover more ground. One investigator found a series of old, dust-covered journals in a hidden compartment in the library. The journals belonged to the original owner of the house, revealing a descent into madness, obsession with the occult, and gruesome experiments on trespassers. Elsewhere, another investigator heard faint whispers and followed them to an underground cellar. The air grew colder as he descended the creaking stairs. The cellar was a horrific sight, with remnants of old cages and chains on the walls. It was clear that unspeakable things had happened there. Meanwhile, the rest of the team experienced disturbing phenomena. Doors slammed shut, trapping them inside rooms. Their equipment malfunctioned, and unexplained shadows moved in the corners of their vision. The feeling of being watched intensified, and the temperature dropped unnaturally. As they regrouped, a sudden scream echoed through the house. Rushing towards the sound, they found one of their team members unconscious with strange dark bruises around her neck. It was then they realized that the legend was more than just a story. The malevolent presence in the house was real and dangerous. The team decided to leave, but the house seemed to have other plans. Corridors twisted and turned, leading them in circles. The air was filled with the sound of mocking laughter and the low, guttural growl of the keeper. After what seemed like hours, they finally found their way out, just as the first light of dawn broke through the darkness. They left the Gracemere estate behind, but the experience stayed with them, a haunting reminder of the night they came face to face with truth. The town, now more fearful than ever, declared the Gracemere estate off limits, and the house was left to decay. But even now, people say that on stormy nights, you can hear the screams of the lost souls and the ghastly howl of the keeper guarding the dark secrets of the Gracemere estate. As the legend of the Gracemere estate grew, so did the fear and unease among the townspeople. The survivor of the initial tragedy and the scarred paranormal investigators became adamant advocates for avoiding the cursed house. The town's council, acknowledging the danger, decided to put an end to the horror once and for all. A team of demolition experts was brought in to tear down the Gracemere estate. As they prepared, a thick fog descended upon the town, as if the house itself was resisting its impending doom. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, and even the seasoned workers felt a chill run down their spine. As the demolition began, strange occurrences unsettled the crew. Machines malfunctioned inexplicably, tools went missing, and eerie whispers echoed around them. An oppressive atmosphere enveloped the site, but the team pushed forward, determined to rid the town of this malevolent entity. Suddenly, as the main structure began to crumble, a deafening roar filled the air. From the ruins, a blinding light burst forth, followed by the ghastly figure of the keeper, its face twisted in rage and despair. It let out a guttural scream that shook the ground, a sound that embodied centuries of pain and anger. The townspeople, gathered at a safe distance, watched in horror and fascination. The air crackled with energy, and the temperature dropped sharply. It felt as if the world had paused, holding its breath. In a heroic effort, the survivor from the first incident stepped forward, holding an ancient artifact that he had found during his fateful visit to the house. It was a talisman, rumored to possess the power to banish evil spirits. With a trembling hand, he recited a chant that he had discovered in the old journals. As he spoke the final words, the keeper let out one last, ear-piercing scream and then dissolved into a cloud of dark mist. The mist seeped into the ground, and the light dimmed until all that was left was the rubble of the house. A profound silence fell over the area. The demolition crew, though shaken, finished their task, ensuring that every trace of the Gracemere estate was gone. In the weeks that followed, the land where the house once stood was sowed with salt and consecrated by priests from multiple faiths to prevent any residual malevolence from lingering. The town slowly returned to normal, but the memory of the Gracemere estate lived on in the stories and nightmares of those who had witnessed its horrors. The land remained empty, a barren patch where nothing grew, a silent testament to the evil that once resided there. And so the terror of the Gracemere estate came to an end. The town moved on, its people finding peace but always mindful of the darkness that had once lurked in their midst. The legend of the estate became a cautionary tale about curiosity and the unknown, a reminder that some doors are best left unopened. It was a cold winter night, and the streets of Soho were almost empty of people. The staff remaining in the stores were hurriedly putting the closed signs on, and the lights were gradually being turned off by people who obviously couldn't wait to return to the coziness and warmth of their homes. Very soon, the few people left around would be making their way to the nearest bus stops and underground stations. At that moment, Michael realized that he was the only person walking on Dean Street, the lights of Chinatown ahead of him getting brighter the closer he got to the famous area. He wasn't on the lookout for something fancy. All he needed was a decent meal somewhere. Earlier that night, he had decided, after endless thought and countless sleepless nights, that he would terminate his 8 long years of being vegan, although meat always used to be the main component of his diet, and the way he enjoyed every bite of it. Tonight, he decided that he wouldn't be picky on its quality. Something modest would simply do the trick. A deep urge to stay away from the crowd made him turn right 2 blocks before he got to Shaftesbury Avenue, one of the busiest roads in Soho. It'd been a while since the last time he got out of his house, hence he deliberately attempted to stay away from people as much as possible. His decision proved right, as down the alley he saw a small wine bar restaurant, giving the street the only source of light in the area. Getting closer, he noticed a guy, probably a staff member of the store, rearranging the display behind the glass front. Next to him was a huge, dry, succulent piece of meat hanging from a hook. A warmness filled up his chest, and immediately he knew that he was in the right place. this was the right place to sin again. By entering the small, cozy restaurant, Michael was met by the smell of red wine that got perfectly along with the wooden interior of the place. Fortunately, the only people inside, the man from the display earlier, who eventually was the bartender, and a couple of a man and woman, one would guess in their 40s, who gave him a quick look just as he entered the restaurant before they go back to their romantic. "I've got to let you know that we'll be closing soon," Mate spoke the man behind the bar, while Michael was still standing near the entrance admiring the place. The newcomer just nodded with a smile and slowly walked towards the bar, where he took a seat on a "What can I get for you?" asked the barman after he patiently looked at Michael reading through the menu that was laid on the bench in front of him. "I came here to eat, mate," replied the man sitting at the bar in a deep, hoarse voice, accompanied by a creepy smile on his face. For the first time, the bartender paid close attention to the man who had just entered the store, and the couple from the nearby table glanced at him again, this time a bit more thoroughly. Something in the presence of the latest customer gave the people who've already been there the chills. You'll have to be more accurate than that, I'm afraid," muttered the bartender, this time looking intimidated by the man sitting in front of him. "I apologize for my bad manners. It's been a while since the last time I dinned out," replied Michael repentantly, and he continued, "For the first time in 8 years, I'm going to eat meat again, you know." "Wow, and what made you take this decision?" asked the barman. "Being vegan, that diet didn't agree with me. It felt right at first, but very soon I started feeling sick and tired." "But why did you become a vegan in the first place?" "The pursuit of meat. It's not an easy task, my friend. The amount of stress that comes with it. The hunt and the hiding." At that point, Michael stopped talking and pondered somewhere on the wooden wall behind the bar, his look empty but intense. It felt like it could stop the passing of time. In a moment of silence, he stood up and he took a few steps towards the exit. Though he didn't leave the store, he just stood behind the glass part of the door and he observed the dark, empty alley in front of the restaurant. Amid the awkward moment, and while all the attendees inside the store kept staring at Michael, the bartender, in a weak voice, he asked, "Sir, excuse me, I don't understand. Are you a hunter?" The mysterious man suddenly turned around, wearing a wicked smile on his face, and he whispered, though clearly and loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm just a meat enthusiast." No one knows what exactly followed that night during the massacre that took place inside the small wine bar restaurant in Soho. According to what the media statements next morning, the police found 3 bodies inside the premises. What terrified everyone, though, was the fact that the third corpse, the one that belonged to the employee of the store, was missing a few parts. The tongue, cheeks, arms, legs, and genitals were never to be found. They were seemingly cut by someone experienced, who knew exactly what knives and technique should be employed. The lead investigator in his first interview verified everyone's worst fears, a nightmare that the citizens of London, and especially the community of Soho and the surrounding areas, still tried too hard to forget. The wounds, still fresh after all this time. After almost 9 years, the cannibal of Soho was back. All the signs pointed that way. Within a few hours, the whole city stood in a state of delirium and panic. Life in central London would never be the same again. While the lead investigator's interview was airing on almost every television in the country, a man in his 1-bedroom flat in Stratford, East London, didn't pay too much attention. Neither he seemed to be worried about the return of a serial killer in the city, whistling along Sweet Child of Mine from Guns N' Roses, wearing just his underwear and a blue apron with the stamp of the UK flag in the front. He looked as happy as anyone while mixing the content of a pot on an electric stove. If only someone stood in his living room, they would be able to see the washed, freshly cut human hand waiting to be finely cut on the man's chopping board.